Hey everybody, I'm Nathaniel Dodson from tutvid.com. Welcome into this Adobe Premiere Pro tutorial where today we're going to take a look at 5 different visual effects that you can create in Premiere Pro. I think they'll be useful. I think you'll really like them. And this tutorial is brought to us by our good friends at squarespace.com. We got to sponsor a couple videos here. You know, squarespace.com. If you're in the market for a new website, go over to squarespace.com/tutvid and use the coupon code tutvid for a nice little discount. Go ahead, show them a little support. They're supporting the channel, helping us do what we do here and bring these free videos day after day after day. Let's jump into Premiere Pro right now and check this thing out. Well, alrighty, ladies and gents, here we are in Adobe Premiere Pro. I am going to just drag my first clip out, and it's going to be this young man with puzzled face in the library shot here. The goal is going to be to create what's called a Dolly zoom, which normally you want to do it in camera more than anything, but we can kind of fake it a little bit here in post, and that's the effect I'm going to show you. Normally, you would sort of zoom the lens in as the camera dollies away from something. So here we're dollying into this guy. What I think I'm going to do is reverse the footage so that we're actually pulling away from him. So I'm going to right-click and choose Speed Duration, and I'm going to say, look, go ahead and reverse that. And now we're going to start zoomed in on him, and we just zip away from him, just kind of like that. And I'll probably pick this up right about here where it's actually beginning to move away from him. So right about there. It looks like we're really picking up the movement, so I'm just going to trim the edge of my clip in. I'll just drag the clip back over to begin, and just right off the bat, we're immediately moving away from him. So the idea would now be to zoom the video to sort of fake a lens zoom into him. But the most convincing dolly zooms pick a focal point, and they kind of like stick with his face. So we sort of want his face to remain right about in that area of the frame. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to come over here to my effects panel, and I'm going to search for an effect called Transform. There it is, Video Effects Distort Transform. I'm going to drag and drop it here on this clip. You can see in my effect controls, there it is, the Transform effect. And what we're going to do is right here at the very beginning of our clip, I am going to drop a keyframe on the scale parameter within my Transform effect by hitting that little stopwatch. And then what I'll do is I will move my playhead in maybe about 4 seconds or so. Let's just go 4 seconds just for the sake of, just because I picked it. Or we'll go 4 seconds, and I'm going to change the scale here from 100. We'll boost it up to like 155. Let's see if 155 looks good. And you can see here, if I move this back away, as the lens moves away, it almost looks like the lens is remaining in the same place. We might need to zoom a little bit further than 155 to help make this look a little bit more convincing. Let's go like 165 maybe. Let's see what that looks like. And you can just see how it almost looks like the background is warping around him, right? It's a very kind of bizarre effect, but it's going to be even more convincing if we animate the position as well. Because see how his head, as we get to the end of it, end of the zooming animation, his head is way up here by the top of the frame. We don't want that. So let's come back over here to the very beginning frame, and we're going to tick on toggling animation for the position parameter here. And then I'm going to move out to where my final keyframe is here. I'm going to hit this next keyframe button to make sure that we're aligned perfectly. And then I'm just going to drag my Y positioning, and I'm going to drag his head down. Well, it's probably somewhere right around there, right? Something like that. And you can see there his head kind of stays in the same place. And before we, once the animation finishes here, the dolly kind of takes off away from him. And that's fine because we're not animating along with the whole thing. But you can see we get this really crazy effect all around the edges of him where it looks like the whole background around him is moving. And again, you'll find different types of footage this works with better, and other types it doesn't work quite as well. I find it works really well where you have some camera movement pushing in or pulling out away from a subject. So if you don't have a subject, you're just like zooming into the sky or something like that, it's not going to look like you're doing anything. But where you have a subject in play, in focus, maybe in the foreground or midground, it's going to work pretty well. Of course, though, best to get it in the camera, but sometimes we don't have that option, especially if you're working with stock footage. So kind of cool to be able to do this. And of course, you can select your keyframes and throw an auto Bezier on them or something like that, just to have a little bit of easing as well and have a little bit of fun with this effect. I'm going to interrupt this broadcast for just a moment here and break out the paper, the good stuff. I'd like to just thank our sponsors over at squarespace.com. Once again, they chose to sponsor this video in Squarespace. Well, they provide the most beautiful and easy-to-use websites that you can have set up and running in no time flat. If you want a portfolio, a blog, maybe a full e-commerce store, or all those things, you can do it quickly, and most importantly, you can do it easily with Squarespace. So the question is, why don't you have a Squarespace website yet? I've had my own personal photography set over there on Squarespace, had it for a few years. It's pretty awesome. I'm not looking to change anytime soon. It's fast, it's easy. It's such a breeze to update. I do web design stuff, and it's still easy for me to update. So if you don't do web design stuff, it should be even easier for you to update, if that makes any sense at all. Go over to squarespace.com/tutvid for a free trial, no credit card required. And when you're ready to launch your website, use the code TUTVID, that's TUTVID, to save 10% off your first website. Check them out, show them some love, and Squarespace, Thank you for helping support this channel. Let's jump back into the tutorial. All right, so here I'm going to drag a clip, just sort of an outtake of one of these tutorials. You can see, look at that, all the behind the scenes before you actually see me on camera. But what we're going to do here is we're going to do a little bit of a VHS effect here. And I want the VHS effect to pick up right here where I can see I begin talking. I'm going to pull the audio waveform down a little bit. So like right here as I begin talking, it would kick to a VHS effect. So how are we going to do this? Well, first and foremost, we're going to cut the video where we want the VHS effect to be. And we're also going to do a little bit of a VHS audio effect. So I'm going to cut it both audio and video tracks. I'll grab my razor tool here. You could use the add edit option as well. So if I move over here to the end right there, up here under sequence, you have add edit. I've mapped a hotkey, the letter Z. It just makes it so fast and easy. Hit the letter Z, boom, you get a cut right across it just like that. So this area in here is going to go to a bit of a VHS effect. How are we going to do that? Well, the first thing we'll do is we're going to search for an effect called Lumetri Color. So we're going to go Lumetri. There it is, Video Effects Color Correction, Lumetri Color. I'm going to drag and drop it on just the video clip here in the middle. And I'm going to move down a little bit. We're going to open up the Basic Correction tab. And I am going to change my contrast to 25. So we're going to bump the contrast a little bit. I'm going to skip over highlights. I'm going to make my shadows a little darker. So I'll go like -35 in the shadow department. I'm going to bump whites up by about 10. And I'm going to bump shadows by about 10 as well. And then I'm going to scroll down a little bit. I want to come down here to saturation. And I want to desaturate it quite a bit. Take saturation down to about 45. All right, I can collapse Lumetri Color, and I'm going to look for another effect here. This one is called Emboss, and there it is, Stylize Emboss. We're actually going to use a color emboss as well, but we're going to begin with just the straight emboss. Let's drag that in beneath Lumetri Color here. Whoa, look at that. We're going to go with the direction. We're going to leave that at 45 degrees. We'll choose a relief of 3, so it's going to make it a little bit more extreme. The contrast, I'm going to bump it about 3 times what it is. I'll go 300. And then blending with the original, here's where we're going to kind of mix it back in. We'll go about 80%. And you can see we're getting this almost faded and like disjointed edge effect. It's giving us that almost just low quality, not out of focus, but that VHS edge effect. And we're also going to drag in a color emboss, because if you got an emboss, hey, let's take it the next step and get a color emboss as well. The color emboss, we're going to stick with the 45-degree direction. I'm going to go with the relief here of 5. I'm going to stick with a contrast of 100. And this also we will blend about 80% with the original because it's a little too extreme there. So there we go. We just pile those 2 embosses on to start really building this VHS effect. Next, I'm going to look for an effect called Shadow Highlight. There it is. It's an obsolete effect. Video effects, obsolete, Shadow Highlight. I'm going to drag and drop that on my video clip. I'm going to uncheck auto amounts. I want to make sure that my shadow amount is 50. Highlight amount should remain at 0. And I want to blend this with the original by about 35%, something right around there. You can really mess around with this a little bit and see what looks good for you. Maybe I'll bump this one to 50%. That looks decent. And then last but not least, let's just throw a little bit of noise on here. So I'm going to look for the noise effect. There it is, noise and grain, noise. I can drag and drop that on here. And what I'm going to do is just set the amount of noise to about 3%. This really adds up fast, so be careful when you're adding noise. And I'm going to use color noise and clip result values. That is all good. Now, one other thing we're going to do is I've got a link for this VHS VCR interference noise clip. You can use just Google YouTube video download or something like that. You'll be able to download clips like this. People upload them and share them on YouTube. And I'll link to this one specifically in my bio for this video, or in the description area for the video. And once you have it, you can drag this in and place it on top of your video. Okay, so I obviously want it over this area. So I'm going to trim it back so it's just over my VHS effect area. I'm going to Alter Option click on this extra sound or audio track. I'm going to delete that because I don't want that. And then I'm going to select the VCR interference, right-click, and choose to first scale it to my frame size. And then I'm going to set it to the blend mode of screen. Now, screen is going to knock away all the black stuff. Just leave the white stuff. And you can see we're going to get this kind of crazy overlay effect like that. And then last but not least, we're going to look for one more effect. This is going to be an audio effect. I am going to look for an effect called AU Graphic EQ. So there it is under Audio Effects, AU Graphic EQ. I'm going to drag it and drop it on the audio right here. And then over in Effect Controls, here it is. I'm going to choose to edit this. And I don't really need the 31 band EQ. I'm going to go with 10 bands. And this is a good time for you to kind of pick up and listen to your audio and listen to what you're getting. I'll knock this down to a quarter quality just so we make sure it's going to play through a little smoother for us. I can hear that it's just kind of the standard audio, so I'm going to make some changes. I'm going to drop a little bit of the lower bass, the more bassy tones out of here. I'll boost some of the mid tones. Kind of like this. Maybe I'll knock that down a little bit. I'll boost some of these middle tones up. I'm going to drop this down a little bit. I'll boost here up a little, and then I'll drop these tones down a little. So I'm just looking to kind of drop out some of the lows, drop out some of the highs, boost some of that middle to give it almost well, you'll hear the effect.
From TechVid.com. Welcome right into this Photoshop tutorial where today we're going to take a look at retouch.
So you can see it's kind of that almost old style audio effect that you would almost expect when you're watching this kind of video. And because we've constrained it just to that clip, of course, our VCR effect will only happen right there over that part of our video. So that was a cool effect, but let's move along to the third effect, and that's this pulse glitching effect. It's a really neat little effect we can add to video, and it begins with just dragging out your video and then immediately duplicating it, because this is going to take place on a series of video clips here above our initial video. So the first video, this is going to be sort of the red channel. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to search for an effect called Channel Mixer, and there it is under Video Effects Color Correction Channel Mixer. Drop it onto that sucker, and what we want to do is get rid of the green and the blue and just make it a red, and you can see, yeah, that's pretty red if I ever saw some redness myself. We're going to go with the, I believe it's the Wave Warp. There it is, Video Effects Distortion Wave Warp. We want to drag and drop this sucker into place. We're going to set the wave height to square, the wave type to square. The wave height will be 100, wave width will also be 100, and the direction, instead of being up and down at 90 degrees, we're going to set it to straight across at 0 degrees, just like that. Wave speed will boost it to like 7, give it some bounce, and everything else will remain normal as it is. And then also we're going to look for an effect called Mosaic, and it's this one right down here, Video Effects Stylized Mosaic. Drag and drop that into place as well. We're going to set the horizontal and vertical blocks both to 100, and here's the key. Turn on sharp colors. You can see it gives us this really cool, almost 8-bit looking effect. Really neat. And then to complete the red layer, we're just going to set this to a blend mode of lighten. You're going to see it's going to give us this crazy red blocky, glitchy looking stuff that's going to constantly move and change as we play through the video. All right, that's the red channel. Let's set up the green here. I'm going to duplicate this video track up. And what we need to do here, you can see we have everything. The only thing we need to change, we need to change a couple things. We need to get rid of all the stuff in red, because we obviously don't want that. We want to go down to green and fill that up. You're going to see it's going to really almost cover up the red stuff. So we're going to combat that by changing the wave warp. So let's change the wave height here to like just 50 and maybe make the width 200, something like that. And we can even change the speed as well. We'll knock this down to like 5 and we'll just see, what this looks like. We can play around and do a little bit of experimentation. Now that actually looks pretty cool. We're getting a nice amount of red and green artifacting. You can customize this really as much as you like. We can even change mosaic here down to like maybe 65 by 65. And you're going to see that's going to change things. I almost think we should go bigger rather than smaller though. Let's go 125 by 125. That's pretty cool. And then we'll just duplicate the green layer up, hold down Alt or Option, drag that sucker up. And of course here, we're first going to change the channel mixer, get rid of green. We're going to fill up a blue, make that 100. It's going to look kind of like we're covering up all the stuff we did with green, but no worries. We already know the solution here under Wave Warp. Let's set wave height. Let's make this a little bit smaller. Let's go 25, and we'll set the width to like, let's set the width to like 50 and see what this looks like. Will give us lots of really small blue artifacty stuff, and maybe I'll make the wave speed here pretty fast. We'll push this up to like 9. I'm going to collapse Wave Warp, open up Mosaic, and this one I think we'll make a little bit smaller. We'll go 75 by 75, keep sharper colors, and now we have this really cool looking, just totally randomized pulsing glitch effect that's going to play through your video. It could be something you mix in with the VHS effect we just covered, but it's a really neat little effect, and it just uses channel mixer, wave warp, and mosaic. You stack these layers up with a red, green, and blue channel, and there you go. That's really it. Let's move along to the fourth thing, which is going to be a sort of double speed ramp. It's really just a speed ramp, but we speed ramp it twice just because, hey, if you speed ramp it once, why not speed ramp it twice? I'm going to take this this video of this sort of underground subway train flying through this tunnel, and we're going to really speed this up. The reason I'm using this clip is because really the more stabilized your camera is, the better the effect is going to look. Like we could take this shot of this drone flying around this sort of but, no pun intended, we would probably want to take it into After Effects and apply some warp stabilization to it, and it's still not going to be the greatest. You really want really smooth footage. The smoother, the better, and this is just a really nice smooth shot. So smooth in general is going to be more cinematic, and this sort of speed ramping is a bit of a cinematic thing. So the first thing I want to do here is right-click on this clip, and I want to choose Show Clip Keyframes and choose Time Remapping and choose Speed. This is going to convert my middle line from that sort of opacity pull up and down to something that will now judge, or not judge, but control the speed of the clip. I'm going to zoom in a little bit here. I'm going to hit my up arrow key to move back to the beginning of this clip. Hold down Shift, and I'm going to nudge into the clip about 30 frames. So I'm going to tap the right arrow key. 1, 2, that's 10 frames. 3, 4, that's 20 frames. 5, 6, that's 30 frames right there. I'm going to hold down Command or Control and just click once to place. You see that sort of keyframe almost, you could think of it as, right there, 30 frames in. We're going to do the same here to the end of the clip, so hit the down arrow key, nudge back, holding down Shift and the left arrow key, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, there we go. Command or Control click to drop that sort of keyframe there. And then we're going to select this middle area, and you see how it's telling me 132%? I'm going to push it all the way up to 1,000%. Voila. Now I need to move back because my clip just got a whole lot smaller. So we're going at normal speed, and then we just really speed things up just like that. But that's not good enough. It's a little bit too sudden. I can grab these handles and just sort of fade my speed ramp in, just like that. That's cool. Let's do it here on this end as well. Fade that sucker in a little bit. But this still is not good enough for me. What I want to do is cut the clip right at the outer edge of these little ramps up to speed that I created, and I'm going to use that same Add Edit hotkey and just hit the letter Z. This is not default. You would have to set your own letter, but you can just come up here and choose Sequence, Add Edit, or just use the razor tool. Chop the clip there. I'm going to move out here to the end of the speed ramp right there, chop the clip there, and then I'm going to right-click on this clip, and I'm going to choose Speed Duration, and I'm going to speed it up another 1,000%. And I'll hit OK. Well, actually, I'll go Time Interpolation. Let's go Optical Flow here just to get a really nice, smooth speed ramp. I'm going to drag this clip back. And now what we're going to have is just sort of a normal clip, super speed, and slows right down. So obviously, you might want a little bit longer of a clip, but this would be a really cool speed ramp effect if you're zooming in on something that you flew over with your drone or something like that. It can be a really, really cool double speed ramped visual effect right here in Premiere, and it's really pretty simple. All right, I'm going to zoom out. Last but not least, we're going to talk about some cinematic camera movement. There's a ton of different ways to do some cinematic camera movement. I am going to do it here with this sort of slow-moving shot. It's just this dude jogging. It looks like there's some wayward frames at the beginning. I'm going to trim them off just like that. So we got the dude jogging slowly. The first thing we want to do is apply that sort of anamorphically shot cinematic bars, right? That 2:3:5 to 1, 2:3:9 to 1 aspect ratio. We can do that a whole bunch of different ways. You can create a PNG file that you just drag right in. I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is create an adjustment layer. Now, I already have one created here, but I'm going to create a new one just so you can see me do the whole process. What I'm doing here is hit the New Item button, and I'm going to choose Adjustment Layer. It's going to say, yep, here's all the stuff with the adjustment layer. Great. I drag the adjustment layer out and place it on top of the video clip or video clips, which I want to add this sort of cinematic crop to. Now what I'll do, I'm going to look for an effect called, well, you guessed it, crop. Video Effects Transform Crop. I'm going to drop that on the adjustment layer. And now to get the effect you want for your standard 16:9 footage, you want to crop top and bottom 13%. So, well, let's select top, go 13%, bottom 13%. I don't know how I got 100% there for a moment. Let's bump this up to 100 to get rid of that glitching out white bar there. There we go. You can see we have the nice black bars in place. It's that simple. If you don't want the black bars, you just shorten your adjustment layer. See that? And the video is all back. But here we have black bars. So it's that simple. You can create a preset out of this, or again, you can just have a PNG file. The nice thing about using the crop effect, obviously, is it's just contained here within Premiere. You're not going to accidentally delete the PNG from your hard drive, and it's all generated here within Premiere when you use the crop effect. So it's just a nice way to do it. You have options in terms of animating and making sure it's a crisp edge and just stuff like that. So this is step one, and then after that, the key is going to be working directly on your clip and kind of doing what we did with the Dolly zoom. So it's just a very smooth, slow, subtle, controlled animation. Whether you want to tilt the camera up or down, push or pull the camera in or out. I always like to go with the transform effect. You could really use position and scale, but it's just, I don't know. On principle, I just try to use the transform effect. And what that principle is, honestly, I really don't know. It's more of a habit thing. So maybe I'll begin right here and I'll say, yeah, let's take the position. And then what I'll do is over the course of a few frames here, I'll just lift the camera. I'm going to tilt the camera upward a little bit, kind of like that. So what'll happen here as this dude begins to run, all of a sudden the camera is just going to work its way upward, just like so, nice and smooth. You can select these. You can right-click, temporal interpolation. We can go with like an auto Bezier here. And of course, you can drag this out, make it as long or short as you like to slow things down or speed things up. and just go ahead, and it looks a little stuttery, but we're viewing it at a quarter speed here. When you render it out, look at it at nice full resolution. You'll just get this nice just sort of camera tilting backward. Again, it's another visual effect that's best done in camera, but sometimes you don't know these things at the moment you're shooting them, and it's nice to be able to come into Premiere and mess around and create little camera movements. We can get rid of positioning and, of course, use some scaling as well. We'll go 100%, and we'll just push into this guy here, maybe 165 or so percent, something like that, and we can just play through, and we can see it's going to begin just pushing in on him as well. It's kind of a trippy looking little effect there, especially with it being all stuttery, but it's a really neat little effect that you can create, and it's just, creating a little bit of cinematic camera movement artificially in Adobe Premiere. Well, there you have it, 5 different visual effects. Yeah, see, they were relatively simple to throw together, and you can just bookmark this video for future reference if you think you could use any one of them and you need to know a specific one of those effects. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you give me a follow over there on Instagram. Keep up with what's going on over there. If you're into Discord, and that's more up your alley, discord.me/tutvid. There's also a link down in the bio for the Discord server where the conversation, I should say, continues on and on and on. For this VHS effect, and for what other effects did we do? I can't even remember right now, but for the VHS effect and the cinematic effect and the Dolly zoom and everything else will be covered in this tutorial, guys. That's it. Get it? Got it? Good. Nathaniel Dodson, tutvid.com. I'll catch you in the next one. And before you go, make sure you subscribe to my channel for more great tutorials every day. Also, buy my course. It helps us do what we do, and this channel is supported by viewers just like you. You can also just click the thumbnail and watch another video from this channel. See you next time, guys.